What does it mean to love the world? For Paul, loving the world meant traveling far and wide, sharing the good news of God's love and forgiveness to all peoples, no matter their language, race, culture, or beliefs. Despite the positive message that Paul felt he was bringing to the world, he grew criticism and opposition from those who felt confident in their own non-Christian beliefs and culture. In today's world, this form of evangelism is no longer appropriate. Believing that our faith is more valid than others is not respectful or acceptable, and has, as we know, created more conflict than love on this planet. However, there must still be something for us to learn about Paul's approach and intention that can be useful in our lives as we too try to love the world. At the time when Paul is writing his letter to the church in Thessalonica, it is about 4 or 5 decades after Jesus' death, and Paul is traveling across Europe, sharing the gospel and establishing churches. He focuses his energy on Rome and Greece, and Thessalonica is a small Greek town. Paul shows genuine love and concern for this community by being willing to face violence in order to teach them about the compassion of Jesus. In the letter, he seems to suggest that he remained with them longer than his usual 2 to 3 weeks and worked hard to try not to be a financial burden. For it would have been normal for a traveling preacher to rely on the generosity of the church in which they enter, to not only provide for their needs while they stayed in that community, but to also give him enough so that he could continue on his journey to the next community. But Paul clearly does not want to be seen as profiting from the people's hard work. Then he goes on to say that he not only shared God's love with them, but also himself, indicating a commitment to ongoing work for the betterment of their community. And as we know, he returns many more times and writes at least one more letter. Paul was also very honest and authentic, no matter where he traveled. He was never afraid to point out shortcomings or to correct behavior that he saw as not in line with the gospel message. He did not evangelize with impure motives or deception or flattery or greed or seeking praise. At the heart of Paul's preaching was a love for all peoples and a deep desire to have them benefit from the knowledge of God's love. Today, our faith encourages us to also have a love for all peoples that can best be expressed by helping to ensure that everyone has the most basic of their needs met, that they have enough shelter or food or clothing, that they have access to an education, appropriate medical treatment, clean drinking water, and that they can feel safe and secure. We are encouraged or called to give generously and support this work, not just through finances, but through our prayers, our worship, and by educating ourselves about the struggles that others face. We do not put limitations on our aid, but like Paul, we believe that all are deserving of these acts of kindness and love. We help others, not so that we can feel good, though we may, nor do we do it to benefit ourselves or to profit in some way, as sometimes our corporations or governments may seem to pick and choose where aid is most needed according to our interests. But rather, we are called by faith and to use the example that Paul tells us that we should give freely because Jesus has shown us that all are worthy of our love and compassion. This means that we don't give what we think someone else needs, but rather we give what they tell us they need. A simple but important distinction. We don't presume to know what is best for others in our world. And it's important that we realize and acknowledge that not all aid or help is good aid or help. Sometimes we miss the mark, and our help ends up creating more problems than good. We heard last night from Ray Dick about some of the traditions of the Canadian Food Grains Bank, that back in the day we used to send boatloads of food over thinking that everybody wanted to eat our corn or our grain, when many of them were used to eating things like rice that we don't easily grow here in Canada. But now we realize that that's foolish, not to talk about even the cost of shipping food over there and how that, whether that really makes sense. But instead, we raise and sell our local crop, giving the money raised from it to the Canadian Food Grains Bank so that they then can purchase the appropriate food in the communities and countries that are receiving the aid, so that their local farmers benefit as well as feeding the people who are in need. Crazy, but simple. Crazy simple, really. And yet important that we've made that shift of recognizing that what we were doing before wasn't the best that we could do, and that now we can do better because we realize that. It makes me think about, in particular, as Christmas is approaching, this Operation Christmas Child. We all know about the shoe boxes by Samaritan's Purse. And I've been seeing again articles, mostly on social media through Facebook and things, about some of the criticism around Operation Christmas Child. We all like to feel like we can purchase things personally and put them in a box, and they will be sent overseas and be received by a happy, smiling child. But I feel, and others, as you may hear, and feel free to look up some articles for yourselves, others talk about, that really it's an old system of aid that uses. It is the idea that we know what needs to go into that box, and what a child in some other country, and there are many countries that receive these shoe boxes, that we know what they need and what they deserve. But they don't really want sugary treats, and they don't really want necessarily even pencils or school supplies. They certainly don't want toys with batteries or plastic parts that are easily broken and that they can't access further batteries for. But we don't really acknowledge their deep need. We think a present that is a toy is always welcome to a child, but in reality, when you are a child that doesn't have a shirt on your back or food to eat, is a stuffed animal or a ruler really what you need? Just going to put that out there for you to think about. But instead, I would suggest that our mission and service dollars, as an example, are distributed through what we call the ACT Alliance. And what that means is that we go to a church in that country and we say, what do your people need? Not just the people that belong to your church, but the community that your church serves. What do those people need? Do they need new homes because they've been destroyed by hurricanes or tsunamis? Do they need food to feed themselves? Do they need financing to begin little entrepreneurial businesses and microloans? Is that what they need? What do they need to bring themselves into a better place? Do they need farming tools and implementations? What is it they need? So then they tell us through the ACT Alliance what their community is in need of, and then we give them the money and they make that happen. for those people in that area of the world. We call that a win-win. We get to offer, and they get exactly what they need. And so this is important, that when we love our world, that we not just love again because it feels good inside, but that we love them knowing that what we offer will make meaningful change in their lives. I ask that you consider this as we consider how we give, especially this time of year as we start to be thinking towards Christmas. And I ask that we give thanks this day to God for the love that we have each received and for the love that we are able to share for others. Amen.